Hello and welcome to The Purpose Pursuit, a podcast hosted by me, Hannah Miller. I am really looking forward to today's episode. As usual, it comes from conversations from my coaching, things that people bring up when we're talking, and my own life experiences. And as always, we're going to try and blend research, my stories, your stories, and action that you can actually take. We'll also weave in the proven Purpose Pursuit process and the way I tend to work with people when I'm coaching them and supporting them through changing their life and helping them get unstuck. This episode we have entitled What They Don't Tell You About Confidence in the Midlife. And I'm in the midlife, and let's use a broad range for midlife. We're going to talk about midlife as being the middle years. You are not in your 20s and you are not in your 60s, okay? The middle years. Anything that feels like you're not fresh out the gates, but you're also still right in the middle of your life. And I'm in that point. I'm probably exactly at the middle of midlife, actually. And I look back on when I was younger, and I've got an older sister and brother. They're a decade older than me. And so I've been around all my life growing up, people that are quite a bit older than me. And I remember saying things to them at different points, which I was like, well, why are you worried about that? Just do it anyway. And I am aware of how little I understood what the middle years felt like. And now I'm in them, I've got my own experiences around my confidence, my own experiences around have I still got anything to give? And I think once upon a time I thought, well, I'm quite a confident person, it's all going to be fine. And now I'm in the thick of it. I realise that confidence and the middle years can be a real roller coaster and really does need to be talked about for women and for men, actually. I tend to talk to a lot of women in my coaching space, but I work with a lot of men who are leaders. And I don't think this is a gender-specific thing, although there are gender-specific attributes to this. I think the middle years bring some really significant challenges and opportunities for us. So I'm going to frame this episode with kind of 5 points. So you've got 5 things you can take away, 5 things that I'm going to try and put a good spin on, and 5 things that you can think about in terms of what your next steps might be. So the first point I want to make is the hidden dip. Why does confidence decline in midlife? That's the first point. It does decline. But actually, the reality is there is evidence that confidence dips in the midlife, but actually it then also peaks if we do the right thing. So there's something that is documented around the midlife being a low point for confidence and satisfaction, which is quite interesting because for most people at this point, they're probably in the main years of their earning potential. So you might think, oh, they should feel more confident because, they're earning more money, they're experienced in their career, but there's something about late 40s where studies show that depression, stress, and self-doubt can really peak in this time of the late 40s. And it can be right at that height of the moment when your career is at its peak, but also your family responsibilities are at your peak. And I wonder whether there's something about the culmination of those two things that's part of why that happens. You are twice as likely, in fact, to be depressed in the midlife than you are as an under 25-year-old or an over 65-year-old. So there's some sort of tension that's taking place in this midlife period where we're perhaps transitioning from what we thought was, and we're not yet in what is yet to come. If you add into this that certain life events happen in the midlife, like you are in a squeeze moment of both realizing that your children are growing, but also your parents need you in a new way. Add on to that women have the psychological aspects that come with menopause. Actually, confidence is really connected to menopausal symptoms for people. Apparently, 70% of women experience psychological symptoms in the menopause. And 20% of women, in fact, over 20% of women said that being in menopause years, in perimenopause actually, affected their confidence at work. So there is something that we just have to name that is in the system of being in the midlife and the knock that it has on our confidence. I think there's something about knowing that you're not fresh out the blocks. And so you haven't got this kind of fresh take and you're not the latest bright young thing that could be part of it. And you're wondering whether you've got what it takes to continue to contribute really well in this next season when you're being pulled in so many directions. I think the unspoken truth in this whole thing around confidence declining in the midlife is that I think we think confidence should be growing with experience, but actually what's happening is there's a U-curve. There is early confidence and, that sass that comes with, and verve that comes with being young. Then there is a decline, but then if you make the right choices, there is a upturn again that takes place in that late 40s and into your 50s where your confidence can grow again. And I think it's really important, as I would always say, that we have to work out what it is that is affecting your confidence. I think one of the things that I have noticed affects my confidence, well, there's lots of things. There's definitely a hormonal element. I've got to be honest and say that I am aware that on any given day I could feel quite differently. And I know that that's part of the journey of being in the middle years of life. But I also am aware that there's something that takes place where I am increasingly aware that I'm no longer the youngest person in the room. And that is something that, because the world is so obsessed with youth and everything is about being younger, looking younger, staying young, that when you have been the youngest in a room and you're not anymore, and perhaps some of your confidence has come from that space, that can knock your confidence. And I've definitely clocked myself being aware that when I'm going off to do speaking engagements, it was often that, I'm quite young on the circuit, and I'm not necessarily anymore. And then you start to think, well, therefore, I'm not young anymore. I haven't got that sort of verve and energy that comes with being young, and other people are occupying that space. So do I have the confidence to still say that I've got something to offer? And I definitely think that's something that knocks my confidence. I also think that some of us experience this feeling, and I don't know whether this is perimenopause or whether this is just actually having a very full brain, that I can feel that my brain is a bit foggy sometimes. And I'll often say to Laura, what's that person's name? Or, help me remember this, because I don't know whether that is because my brain is cluttered or whether it's because there is some fog or whether it's a bit of both. That can knock your confidence when you are used to being somebody who's quite articulate and you don't struggle with that. So I think there's something about adjusting some of our expectations of ourselves so that our confidence isn't just measured with old-fashioned metrics that are no longer appropriate for this point in our life. So I think the practical step I want to leave with you for point number 1, that confidence can decline in the midlife, is figure out what drains your confidence. And also figure out what boosts it. What's happening and when do you feel like you are feeling your confidence drain from you? And what things have occurred that just back up this self-fulfilling prophecy that, I don't have any confidence. And also what things are occurring that are telling you otherwise. And there's got to be a little bit of a diagnostic that takes place and understanding how's your confidence doing and what do you think is a trigger. Okay, so that's the first part. My second point is the confidence myth. It is not about feeling ready. I think a lot of us think that being confident means that we think we have got everything ready, everything lined up, and therefore we can act. But actually, confidence follows action, not the other way around. I think we've got this feeling that I have got to be ready for this, I've got to feel confident for this, but actually that is not the way confidence works. Bear with me a minute. Women in particular, by the way, feel they need to be 100% ready before taking a leap. Like the number of people I speak to, there's so much anecdotal evidence and statistical evidence around this idea that women don't apply for jobs unless they meet 100% of a job description, and men will do that if they're somewhere between 40 and 60% fitting the job description. There's this feeling of like, I've got to have all the ducks in a row, I've got to have everything I need, then I'll feel confident and then I can take a leap. That probably isn't something that necessarily affects me in my personality, but I think for a lot of people, they think that I've got to be ready and then I can do the thing. But anybody who talks to you about confidence is that we need to not see it as almost like a thing that we have in our personality, as a you either have it or you don't, but it's something that you can grow as you take courageous action. So a bit like a muscle, I've got a bicep. It's just, I can actually feel my bicep a little bit because, trying to lift a few very small weights, but if you've got a bicep and you never lift a weight, that muscle is not going to grow. But as you increase weights, as you increase resistance, that muscle grows and it can do more than it did before. But if we expect confidence to like land on a plate in front of us and we go, oh, thank you for that confidence, I'll now use that to go forward, we are never going to make that step. And I think because you may feel like you had confidence when you were younger, when maybe you were just a little bit more courageous and maybe you were just a little bit less aware of the risks because you were younger, you haven't lost your confidence. You're just maybe not using the muscle in the way you should be. It's more of when we feel like we need confidence and instead we're feeling a sense of self-doubt, I think we need to reframe that as a moment to practice courage. And it's just about an incremental step of courage that will then grow our confidence that terrible things didn't happen. Megan Costello, who was a former executive director, she says that if you are 50% or 70% there, you've got to just jump and just do it. And I think there's something to be said here. We don't want to have a blind confidence, which is, I'm going to do this and I've got 10% of what it takes. That's foolishness. But if you wait for 100% of everything, you've waited too long. It's no longer courageous. In fact, it's the very definition of not being courageous if everything is lined up and easy. Confidence and courage, and actually good leadership, comes from recognizing you haven't got everything that you need. Because otherwise that can come across as actually arrogance and not needing your team or not needing the people around you. So for this second point, I really just want you to lean into the fact that confidence is a muscle. It is something that we can grow. It is not a personality trait that's dished out that some people have more of and others don't. I'd encourage you to look back over different situations where you stepped out and use those as fodder to kind of give you the confidence and courage to go again. Okay, point 3, the confidence killer. What kills our confidence? Well, comparison and unmet expectations can kill our confidence. The problem with being in midlife is you've got a whole lot of potential experience to pull on, but you've got a whole lot of missed expectations too. You've got all the times that it didn't work out. You've got all the things you'd hoped for that didn't happen. You've got the life experience that says, yes, sometimes it doesn't work out, actually, and sometimes you fall flat on your face. And when I did this, X, Y, Z happened. And you've got a whole load of people around you that you can now compare yourself to, like potentially younger people with a whole fresh set of experiences and a fresh approach on work to compare yourself to. So I think one of the things we do is we start thinking about what we'd hoped life would look like versus what actually it looks like. Most people are living a life in their midlife that they probably didn't expect. Like, it might be more amazing than they thought. It could be more challenging than they thought, or it could just be different. But I don't think there are that many people who map a plan out from the age of like 15 and actually in their 40s are in that. I don't know what I was thinking life would look like, but I definitely don't think it was going to particularly look like this. I think there are a whole load of things I hadn't even imagined that are amazing that have happened to me, and a whole load of obstacles I faced that I had no idea that I was going to have to face. And sometimes, if I stop and engage with the last decade, in fact, I did that this morning. I was in the shower and I was just kind of reflecting on the last 10 years of my life. So much has happened in the last 10 years. Some really, really awful things that I wouldn't want anybody to have to experience, and some amazing opportunities. But none of them had I particularly expected. Not expected at all. And so actually, the unmet expectations or the life looking different can really kill our confidence. Because you might say to me, well, I tried that before, Hannah, and it didn't work out. Or I'm divorced and I never expected to be. I thought I'd have a happy ever after. Or I actually got made redundant and I was, this is completely not my confidence and I didn't expect that to happen to me. And what's really interesting is it's not even about a lack of achievement. Sometimes really high achieving individuals still feel this sense of eternal stuckness or underperformance because they never feel quite like they've done enough. for part of my work, I work with a lot of business owners, and I get given like information on all the people that are going to be in the room, and a little bit about the way these people tick. And one of the recent bios that I read was a guy who was incredibly high achieving, went to one of the top global universities, has done a huge amount in their work life, and it said sort of in brackets, still feels like the sibling that underperformed. And I'm like, there's something there which is not even true or real, that is knocking the confidence of that individual. So it doesn't even need to be based in fact. The fact that your confidence might be killed by comparison or unmet expectations or life not looking like you thought it was going to, don't even need to be true or real. But there is a good thing that can happen, that if we go through the process, if we choose to lean in, our brain learns to let go of regrets as we get older. There are things we learn to sort of begin to see differently, to frame differently, but we have to do the work of acceptance. Like, there is no point us wanting to be in a life we're not in. We can shift the life we're in and move closer to something we're looking for, but a whole alternate reality of my life, there's no point even giving that any airtime. That's not the life I'm in. It's not the life I've chosen. I think the other thing I want to say to you about the confidence killing is that you may look at a 20-year-old in your team, or a 20-year-old that you know. I mean, I've got loads of 20-somethings around me, that there are so many things that they've got which are a gift, but they also do not have all the information that you have. You have got life experience, you have got work experience, you have got knowledge that you've collected. And there's so much that you can do if you can shift the way you look at this and think, actually, yes, you may not have what the new skills for the latest intake of people around you, but you have got the stripes of life that are so valuable if you can see it that way, to really build your confidence and to support, actually, rather than feel threatened by the people around you. I think what's really important as a practical step here, and I say this to everybody I work with, you need to take stock of what you do best. You need to shift from thinking, where should I be now, to what do I uniquely bring right now? There are things that you uniquely bring to that team that if you can confidently step into that, it's something that nobody else can offer. Only you can. Again, I believe confidence grows when you make yourself comfortable with who you are rather than who you are not, and show up fully, contributing that bit of the pie rather than trying to be a different piece that you can't be. So the fourth point then is about the midlife superpower. And I've just kind of stepped into that a little bit. What is your unique edge? We need to stop looking at midlife as just constantly about loss. I think I have to say that I could feel a victim of doing that a little bit. I feel like there's been such a lot of loss and letting go in the years that I've just been in, loads of letting goes, that I can forget that there's loads of gain as well. What have I gained as an advantage? What have I got as my depth of experience that I didn't have before? If we can shift the way we think about it and think, actually, what am I gaining? What are all the things I've gained over the last 20 years? I can see that as something that is a massive gift to the people around me. I happen to do quite a lot of work with young adults, and both in my personal life and through work. And the eagerness they have to be around people a bit older than themselves astounds me. Like the number of times we have people say to us, thanks for giving us your time, or we just like being around you. I'm just like, I'm not really doing anything. But there's such a desire from the 20-somethings to be mentored, to be coached, to be supported. There is a massive advantage that I can bring, both in terms of upskilling myself and them. In fact, we had some young adults round to our house just a couple of weeks ago, and this week actually just gone, and we're in the middle of a big life event here because my mother-in-law is in the final days of her life, and these young people who were with us, when I say young people, I mean young adults in their 20s, they said, it is just so good to be around you whilst you're going through this life event. You're kind of showing us the way. And I was like, really? kind of overwhelmed by how much impact that was having when I didn't really think I was doing anything, just being normal and doing life. So I'm telling you this to say that you are doing that in your workplaces. You are living and breathing and living out experience. You are bringing a perspective that only you can do. And the way you're going to grow this confidence in your midlife is to let go of external validation. And actually, really interestingly, you can gain your confidence as well by taking on more responsibility. Where you might feel like you want to shrink in this moment and think, I now don't know who I am. I'm in that messy middle. I'm not the youngest in the team anymore, but I'm not, super senior either. Taking on responsibility can give you reason to believe in yourself again. Giving yourself the opportunity to mentor and coach people and realise, actually, I've got life experiences to offer. I've got personal a unique edge and things to bring to the table, and I'm going to stop looking for that to be externally validated and validate it for myself. You are going to grow your confidence and bring a unique edge. So I think how you can shift this in the midlife is to move from this idea of do they think I'm good enough? Do the people around me think I'm good enough? Do I meet their expectation? To instead thinking, I know what I bring. I know who I am and I know what I bring, and that is what I'm going to do. So I think my practical step for you here is to stop and recognise the way you already lead. If you haven't been through the process of getting to know your strengths and getting to know your talents, do it. Give yourself the language to be able to say, this is what I do really, really well. I don't do that, and I'm actually not going to spend the next 10 years trying to. You do that, you are brilliant at it. It's not about having expertise in everything. It's about owning your strengths, owning your talents, and owning the experience that you've got, not the things that you don't have. I've been doing some interviews actually for, I'm on a board of a charity, and we are taking on a couple of new trustees. And this one man, lovely, lovely man, I think he's I would imagine in his 50s. And we asked him about what he felt he was going to contribute to the board. And he gave such an unbelievably good answer. He told us 3 things that he knew he did well, and he just said them in a sentence. And then he said to us, I'm not so good at this and this. And he just simply said it as that. He made no apology. He didn't expect he needed to be everything. He also didn't shrink back from the thing that he was really good at. And it was a really lovely way of talking about himself. It wasn't arrogant. It wasn't showy. It was really quite factual, and clearly came from a person that knew themselves and knew their limitations. And that had given him confidence to say it. So I would encourage you to be able to do something similar. Say, I'm good at this, I'm good at this, I'm good at this, I'm not so this or that. And that's enough. Know that and stick to that, and it will grow your confidence. Finally, point 5, where are you going? The long game. Now, there's something that gets talked about. There's actually a book called The Second Mountain, which is about the long game. So the first mountain is, it doesn't have to be to do with life stage, although most people go through the first mountain in the first half of life. That is when you are trying to build stuff for yourself, you are on the up with your career, you're building a family, you're thinking about all the things you're going to do. And then there is a second mountain that can come actually at any age of life. Some people reach second mountain much younger than others. But the second mountain is about a moment when all this stuff is going on, like who am I, what do I bring, confidence could get knocked. But instead of letting it shrink you, you decide to make your world bigger in the second mountain by doing something that has vision, that has purpose, that has legacy, and that has reach. Now, that doesn't have to be like globally. Like that reach and vision and purpose could be your grandchildren. Like it could be about your literal micro environment. But it is about this sort of shift where instead of sort of like breathing in and what can I get? It's like this breathe out. What can I leave behind? What can I add quality to? Where can I value add to the things around me? And I think if we can shift to that, so much more will come our way by just having that kind of attitude. And instead of feeling stuck, kind of thinking, I'm changing a gear. It's not a case of I've got nothing more to give or that I'm past it and I just need to sort of plateau, because I absolutely do not believe that. But it might be that a fresh set of goals or a fresh set of vision for the next decade ahead of you is necessary. And old goals and old baggage and old desires are not well equipped for the next decade ahead of you. I feel a little bit like that in my own life right now. I'm quite young to be at the phase I'm at where my children are nearly all the way through, all of them, because we were young when we had our boys. And so I feel like it's an important time for Sam and I to think, now, what's the next decade about? You know, what are we going to invest our time in? What are we going to give ourselves to? What's the legacy of the next decade? How do we want to spend our time? And I think if we can do that, we have the potential to have a lot of courage and confidence and adventure for the next decade ahead of us and the decade after that, and so on and so forth. So I think the unspoken truth here is that the best way to rebuild your confidence is to start moving towards something that feels increasingly meaningful, and just being honest with yourself that that's probably what you're looking for. Meaningful stuff. I actually, was with a friend recently, and I could tell that she was a bit agitated around the fact that she's like, what am I doing? What am I doing in this next decade? This is not enough. And it wasn't that it wasn't enough in terms of like accolade. It was just more like there's something more that I feel I want to contribute. And I'd say, go for it. Go for it. Find people that are going to increase your sense of vision rather than shrink you back. And I guess my closing thought for you on this is confidence is built. Confidence is not found. If you just are waiting for confidence to take action, I think that you're going to be disappointed. You're going to stay stuck for longer. Your midlife years are going to challenge your confidence in a way you may not have experienced before, but it can also cause you to refine your confidence so that you think, actually, this is me. This is what I do best. This is how I show up. This is what I want my life to stand for. This is how I lead. This is how I'm going to give legacy, and this is how I build my confidence. So I think if you can step into that discomfort a little bit rather than pretending it's not happening or letting it shrink you. And if you can really know your true strengths, you are going to keep moving forward. And the next decade and the decade after that are going to be fruitful and give you the opportunity to thrive. But if you're trying to make it look like it looked before, I think we're only going to be disappointed because it's going to be a second-rate version of those years that we've had previously. I would love to hear from you on this. I'd love to hear what's challenged your confidence in the midlife. I'd love your experiences on that, or what your reflections are listening to this. I'd also love to hear where you've found courage has paid off. Where have you done something that felt courageous? And your definition of courageous is going to be very different to somebody else's, but I would love to know more about that. So as we finish today, remember, confidence is not a feeling. It is a result of taking action. And you're going to have some dips in these years, but the rebound is something worth holding on to. Your best confidence, if you choose it, is still ahead of you.